The problem that I see, and I think Doran as well, and I think you as well, Stephen, on social media, I don't know if you see it as a problem rather, but like America is this thing that they want to be America first, and I understand that. And there is this whole movement that goes against mainly Ben Shapiro and all that train of thought that Ben Shapiro tries to suck up to the Israel because he puts Israel first, not the US first. So how do you look about all this, let's just say, this thingy that the Israel has the connection to the US, and what do you think about the narrative that social media creates about that narrative?
I think Israel is really good at advocating for itself. I think that I think historically, because Jews have kind of held on to their culture across different countries, and just because of kind of the weird like place that Jews were kind of pushed to in society, being kept out of certain jobs and then gravitating towards others, it kind of like gave the Jewish people like the ability to like exist. Like for instance, like the fact that like what is it, usury or whatever, like lending at an interest was illegal, allowed Jews to participate in financial sectors more, allowed them to be more educated, and then because that's always been like a really important cultural value, it's allowed them to communicate their ideas across the world in some ways more beneficially than not. Like sometimes people can become victims of their success, and sometimes you can become successful as a result of your trials and tribulations. Like arguably, the Jewish people's lack of any kind of coherent state for 1800 years or whatever, for 2000 years, might have been beneficial in because something has to keep you together, right? The only thing that would survive at the end of that is something with some kind of coherent, strong, unifying idea. So the existence of AIPAC in the United States, the fact that you have a decently wide base of people to draw from that are also like decently wealthy and like really want to advocate for their interests, like that is a real thing. It happens in the U.S. I think that neo-Nazis and far-right people, and I think Israeli people overestimate sometimes the impact they can have on U.S. thought. Like I said, my personal belief is I just think that the story of Israel, people didn't give enough credit for just how good the story was. And that's why so many people in the US, especially during the Cold War, were kind of captivated by that and fell into it. Or I say fell into it, but I mean, like thought it was a good story and something worth supporting. And today, with that story not existing anymore, and now as you're getting in this weird populist right wing era of especially in the United States, this weird isolationist stuff, it's going to be very hard, I think, for Israel to find a lot of support from the United States, maybe as people start to get older and older. I don't know how long this weird isolationist populist bend is going to happen, but Israel is going to have to do some serious like work reforming its, kind of appearance to the West, because, like to an average American, if you ask them, like, why are we so friendly with Israel? Like, that's a hard question for a lot of people to answer. And, like, do we really feel like Israel needs our help militarily? Regardless of how you might feel there is an existential threat or anything, in the West, it just looks like Israel just beat the shit out of every single country around it and nobody did anything about it. And that's the feeling that exists. And Israel is going to have to take an attentional approach to change that if they want to, in terms of remaining close to the West. And I think.
So just so I can understand and then give it to Doran, you're basically saying, that's what I understand between the lines, we're basically lobbying, or maybe lobbied great, and we have great powerful people in the US, and that's why we influence it, but our story isn't as mainstream or try to be controlled, or rather try to be said to the Western world and to the US. That's what I understood. Is that right?
As time has gone on, the story is not as one-sided anymore.
I'll try to rephrase it, Destiny, if that's okay, and you tell me if I got it about right, because I thought it was very smartly done by you, actually. So what you're saying is that the story of Israel is actually a pretty good, an amazing story. Well, you didn't use the word amazing, but it's a pretty good story of a bunch of ragtag Jews come up with a crazy idea and then come and against all odds, kind of make it out there. But over time, as the generations have changed, Israel is strong, and now the story appears completely different, right? And that's how. So I thought that's a very sharp observation, and I'd like to commend you for it. I haven't thought of it this way. I would like to add just a couple of more points that I think make the Israel-U.S. alliance kind of unique. There are many U.S. interests in the region and in Israel, of course, and you probably know them quite well. But I would like to bring up some interests and unique characteristics that are not brought up as often. So the first one is that Israel is an effective ally because it acts. It doesn't wait for the US to do things for it, right? If you look at maybe, I don't know, I guess you could say Japan or South Korea or Australia, or I don't know what, these countries, it's not certain they would act to save themselves, in a sense, right? They would count on Big Brother to show up and do the work for them. And I think Israel has shown that it's effective in that it takes care of business, and that the Israeli proactiveness kind of invites further US leaning into it, because Israel shows that it's a competent force. And as much as I hate to use the word, Israel, of course, takes care of its own interests, but by applying force and by being a country that acts even without US direct supervision and without direct US involvement, that kind of makes it more useful, right? Because you have a dog that doesn't just bark, it also bites. I mean, I hate comparing us to a dog here in this analogy, but I think that I had to do it for the point to land. So that's number one. Number two is probably something that I think is quite unique in Israel. I might be mistaken on that, but the US is very popular in Israel. Even though many people advocate for reducing dependency on the United States, which is, funnily enough, something that all of the anti-Israel people on the both right and left won't bring up. But many people in Israel think that there's too much dependence on US aid, and that it needs to be changed in the next couple of years. And actually, I think Netanyahu even came out and said something along these lines. So this is... what I'm saying is that the United States is extremely popular in Israel, and that Israeli activities that directly benefit the United States are seen quite positively here, both on the right and on the left. So that's something that I think is quite unique to the alliance of the US and Israel. I don't know if there's another US ally in which the US is so popular and beloved. I could do the whole shtick of Judeo-Christian traditions, but I don't guess you're the guy to do that whole song and dance too, right? So
and also, may I add the geopolitical power it has against like Russia and Iran and all that opposition.
Yeah, but that's not unique, right? You have other U.S. allies that have geopolitical values.
Yes, but we are the Amer and the, what it's called, the Mizrach Tichon, like in the Middle East. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, but yeah, of course, yeah, I agree with that. But I was, trying to say the things that were unique about Israel, because the U.S. could also use other allies elsewhere, right? It has Japan, which is a power in the Pacific. It has, it has South Korea. Yeah, whatever, you get it. So that's what I had to say. I've been going for quite some time.
So responding, Stephen, also let's wrap it up so we can go to another discussion. I'm sorry for that.
We're taking too long.
No, it's okay. Like if we had more time, it would be great. But like today we had 2 hours. So yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but like, in the 60s, there's domino theory and the whole world could fall to communism and we might lose access to the entire Gulf if we don't have a place there. And these are immediately felt arguments that every American, especially in the Cold War, after the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything else, like we're like 100% tuned into this. And, to say, well, Israel is important because they can represent interests in the area, can take aggressive actions against other enemies. It's like, I understand what you're saying, and I think in a very intellectualized, geopolitical, geostrategic sense, I can be like, okay, I understand that. Well, I mean, I do. I think Israel's a good partner. I'd rather be partnered with Israel than Iran. But I think selling that idea to the average American is much, much, much harder, especially when we're on our big isolationist spend. And then I would also say I will take issue a little bit with the idea that Israel, will bite on its own, like as opposed to like Japan or whatever. It's like, okay, well, fighting China is very fucking scary. Fighting Hezbollah is also kind of scary, but significantly less so. I think Russia and China are big, scary enemies. And at the end of the day, when, the Iranian nuclear reactors are buried really deep underground, the U.S. does have to come in there and take care of that, because the heavy, arms needed to get down there is really, really hard to do, unless you're have your B-52s or whatever.
Well, did the Saudis bite?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. When I did my whole Middle East history studying, I'm not entirely sure what Saudi Arabia does in terms of military. I don't know if they have anything at all.
They don't bite. Oh, they have quite a strong. So they have quite a strong military. They have one of the largest GDP per capita spent on military.
Yeah, I know you're saying that. I hear that. I just don't know what they do ever. I feel like in the 6-Day War, I read that they or not the 6-Day War, prior to this, when there was all the fighting in Yemen, like 3 cargo planes took off and they just like flew to Cairo and they just like stayed with Egypt for. I have no idea what's.
No, it's okay. I don't know any of the Gulf states. We don't need to know everything. We're good. We're just talking civilly.
I'm saying it half facetiously, and that like I agree. I feel like I don't know if Saudi Arabia went to war with anybody. Well, they went to war with Yemen and they couldn't even get rid of the Houthis after.
Yeah, look. I wasn't trying to get to. I wasn't trying to make fun of you. I was just trying to say that you have examples of U.S. allies in the region who don't bite, right? So
yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I don't feel like the Saudis could do anything. On
and I think that thing you said about convincing the average American with the whole isolationist streak that's going on right now, I think that was a fair and good point. So kudos to that.